Did you know this about Furiosa of Mad Max Saga? Anya Taylor-Joy doesn't have a driving license, despite learning to do a J-turn on her first day of stunt school. So I was a little skeptical about this movie. Spin-offs sometimes are not received well by audiences. I gotta say, I was really happy with this movie. It's a very solid prequel and spin-off, and I have 3 reasons why I love this movie. The story was pretty straightforward this time around. Mad Max was more of a narrative style. Furiosa was a straightforward revenge story. Furiosa getting revenge on Dementis is, just focused on just her coming up of age, going through all this really sad, crazy things as a kid, working her way up the ranks, and then, the end goal is have her revenge. The movie builds Furiosa's character really well. The story was just super strong. I also liked the characters that we got introduced to in this movie. Dementis is at the top of my list, but there are a few other characters that were fun to watch. But we also got to see the Bullet Farm and Gas Town. They were only talked about in Mad Max, but we never got really into these 2 places a whole lot. In this movie, we got to see them extrapolated and just really dove deep in each one, why they're important, why Dementis wanted them. It just made the story even deeper and richer to include those locations that we've only heard about. And Morning Joe coming back was awesome. I'm glad that he was incorporated into this movie. He actually got some good screen time. We got to see war rigs again. It was really like a combination of the stuff we're all familiar with in Mad Max with some new additions. The action sequences in this movie were incredible. I honestly want to say the sequences in this movie I liked better than Mad Max. The sequences in Mad Max were crazy and just off the charts and all practical stunts. But this movie kind of stepped it up another level, and the 15-minute action sequence in this movie just went crazy. The modifications they did to the war rig, but also just like people flying over the war rig, dropping stuff on there. We got to see the poles again, but we also got to see these new inventions. There's a hang glider, but there was also like parachuting. It's so creative, but it was so well executed. Like, it was a perfect combination of chaos, but there was also like organization to that chaos. But yeah, there were some really brutal scenes in this movie. A couple of them completely caught me off guard. Like, the brutality of this movie is the next level. Mad Max was brutal, but this movie, a couple of scenes, especially a scene at the end, was, I'm not going to spoil it, but it was brutal. It was insane. Did not see it coming. A little disturbing, honestly, but it was really crazy how these scenes were just kind of turned up a notch. The battle for survival, like what people will do, how they will fight, their mentality, the weapons they choose, like everything. They don't really have any morality. They kind of just abandon all their reasoning and their sense and then just go into survival mode. There's no limit to what a person can do when they're in their fight or flight mode, and we got to see that showcased really well in this movie. And my last reason, which is my favorite reason, my favorite scene in this movie, was the 15-minute action sequence. In production, it was called The Stairway to Nowhere. It took tons and tons of hours to pull off, tons of people to pull off. It was almost like watching a fireworks show where you start with like the smaller fireworks, little action here and there, and you get bigger and bigger, and then you finally have the grand finale. And that's kind of how I felt watching this. You got a couple guys coming in, then the next level, then the next level, then the next level, and every level it turned up the heat just a little bit more until you got to like the climax, and they finally got to turn on the addition that they added to the war rig, and it was nuts. It was absolutely crazy. But George Miller has just a great vision when it comes to executing action sequences like this. He's got a knack for this specific kind of sequence, just constantly bombarding you with stuff, but keeping it entertaining. The level of insanity that he can keep it on, and just all practical effects. There wasn't any green screen done in these fight scenes. These guys were all stuntmen. And that's something that you don't see a whole lot in movies nowadays, so that's why I just love movies like this where you can feel the energy more. The action is more real when you know that it's practically done and not in some set. It was out in the middle of the desert in Australia. They made it seem like you were just in the fight constantly. You were like Furiosa fighting all these guys off, trying to get the war rig out of the bad places. This really well done. Absolutely loved this scene in the movie. So I highly recommend check out Furiosa as soon as you can, because it's a really awesome movie. So for Furiosa, I'm going to give it a 8 out of 10 Mudflaps. And remember to leave me a thumbs up and drop in the comments below. Who's your favorite character from Mad Max? See you next time.